Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Andrew Hanson, who's Vice President of Generations Wealth Management, and we'll be talking about finding the right investment vehicle. Andrew, welcome to the program.
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me. Looking forward to getting a chance to hang out with you.
You know, I always love talking to new people and learning about their experiences, and certain things jump out at me. And when I was saying finding the right investment vehicle, it kind of made me think, you know what, for retirement, we do need investment vehicles to take us places, and they need to be specially chosen. So I'm excited to learn what you have to teach us. But before we dive into that, give us a little bit of your story and background, and how did you get into the financial services industry?
Absolutely, Mike. Yeah, I came on board about 8 years ago. Not just out of the blue, but I came into the family business. Richard, my father's been doing it for about 40 years now. And so I was always kind of like trepidatious about getting into the business just because I've always been, not a numbers guy or like an accountant guy or like a Wolf of Wall Street. I did a lot of volunteer work with Special Olympics. I grew up in San Clemente, California. So we were close to the Camp Pendleton base out there with the Marines. So I would always go down there for Thanksgiving. During the summers, I would cut grass for all the guys who were out on deployment. So I was just a very like a Peace Corps kind of, I was really interested in that kind of aspect of life. But eventually, I started doing a lot of, I was in my 20s, probably 25, 27. I was doing a lot of warehouse jobs and man, my back is just starting to hurt a lot more. Okay, Rich, what's this thing that you do? Tell me more about it. And, he's kind of always been not pushing me to do it, but he's just like, hey, it's there if you want to do it. I'd love to have you aboard. So he brought me in, and I'll keep it short. I'll do kind of like a retrospect my first day, but I had the opportunity to work with an insurance company, and one of the major ones, I won't say their name, but that was my very first experience that year in, just to kind of get my boots wet. And I hated it. It was just phone calls, just names and numbers, call the next one. Okay, call the next one, call the next one. It was kind of like, I mentioned Wolf of Wall Street. It was kind of like that. It felt like that. There was no personal connection. There was no relationship building. So that first day coming into Rich's office, I was not very optimistic, but I had my full brand new suit done. I'm like, all right, let's just, let's do this thing. I got Dad here. We're gonna make some real magic. And he looks at me and he goes, get in the filing cabinet room. I need you to do all the files. I'm like, okay, cool. But that was, in that filing cabinet, looking through the client list, I saw a lot of people I was familiar with, family, friends, my T-ball coach, my friends' parents, people we went to church with. And for me, that was kind of like an eye-opening. And I learned a lot in that first month and first couple of years, and a lot of instances in which I'll cover later. But that really helped really motivate me and kind of change my perspective and outlook on the industry. So I'm very fortunate.
Yeah, have someone that you can model as they say, success leaves clues, and you can model with, hey, show me the system, show me the ropes. And then he started you in the quote unquote mailroom, so to speak, but not really the mailroom, but learning from the bottom up. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I thought that was important because, I'm very fortunate in the situation that I'm in. And I think anybody who's going into family business, it's always, you got to remember how lucky you are. Not a lot of people in this industry have this kind of initial welcome to the door. So, that's one thing I never forget every day and take for granted, the opportunity 100%. That I had and continue the legacy. So.
So obviously, if the name of the company that you guys are own and work with is Generations Wealth Management, we're talking about building wealth for retirement. And the topic we want to talk about today is finding the right investment vehicle. Where do you
Hmm.
start with the people that you're working with to help them even explain, what investment vehicles to consider? But like someone in their 30s and 40s might be different than someone in their 60s or 70s related to investment vehicles. So where do you start there?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the word vehicle, and I think you can, if people are kind of trepidatious with investment, think of vehicle, that word vehicle alone. I mean, you're talking about a car or a van. You can go to any dealership, they can offer you this vehicle. They can offer you the new Tesla. They can offer you the new Kia. But what is it that kind of separates, certain dealerships or certain car salesmen that are different from all the other ones? Because there's thousands of them, but they all offer the same vehicles. It's building that trust and that confidence and feeling safe and knowing that you're going to take this car off the lot. And if there's ever any issues or any questions you have, you can just bring it back. That guy's going to take care of it for you. That kind of just came to mind to me right now. But, first and foremost, you got to have a relationship with the client, and you got to make sure and understand not just the numbers and goals and risk management. That's all um, very, very important. But I think, first and the main thing is to understand what their overall goals are.
Yes.
What do they imagine their future to look like? So if it's something that they foresee, I want to spend more time with the grandkids. I want to, do vacations every summer. You got to build that out for them. But every investment vehicle, like any car, it's not a one size fits all approach. So you want to have an open
You bring up
discussion.
an interesting point about understanding and relationship and the example about, like an actual car dealership. Anyone can send an email to a car dealership and say, I need a vehicle, please sell it to me. And here's my credit card. But if you don't know what they need it for, so when you are sitting down with a new client, you're going through and asking them questions to make sure even before you talk about strategies, rate of return, all of those things that you need to get into. But first, you got to figure out where they're headed and what they need and what they want to craft that unique situation, solution for them, right?
Yeah, I mean, any competent advisor who's been doing it for a long period of time, they all can relatively, give or take a couple percentages on and off. They can sell the same things that I do. They can get the returns the same way that I do. The difference is, like you said, just because especially with most of the work that we do is through referrals. So there's kind of a relationship and an understanding there before they even step into the office. But, people that I get with seminars and workshops, this is the first time they're meeting me. And
Sure.
so for me, I will never take for granted or never look past the vulnerability that it takes for clients, especially first one, to come in and just lay everything out on the table. I mean, that in itself is just, I mean, I'm getting vulnerable just even talking about it. It's just,
Yeah. Trust.
here's my life. Help me. And you don't know if I come back and say, oh, this is the worst thing in the world, or, this is the greatest thing in the world, because they're coming to you who, for the most part, they have an idea, but they're seeking, professional opinion, and it's up to you to kind of guide them through it and understand that most clients aren't going to they're not going to want to know everything. I think the relationship and understanding the client's, individual needs and wants. And as most of my guys, I find out pretty quickly if they want to have a constant contact and informational relationship. So I talk to them almost on a quarterly basis, and I go, hey, your accounts are doing this, and if we can project in the future, what does this look like? And I really think that we're managed well in this position, and quarterly, this is how it's going to project going forward. And after a certain time, the client feels comfortable with enough
Yeah.
with us, and he goes, hey, man, I love chatting with you, but I trust you. I don't need all this information. Just, I know you're going to take care of me. Just keep me updated every now and then. But
Yeah.
I think, yeah, it's
It takes
finding out
it
what
takes a
that
minute to
individual wants.
develop that level of trust. And sometimes it's needs to be proven, not just said.
Yeah, because, there's a lot of other options out there. I mean, you can drop a dot in Google Maps and you can find, 5 or 10 people who do what I do. It's just what I will always stand by and I will always promise that separates us is we're going to do that extra step. We're going to find the
Yep.
stuff that really matters to you, and we're going to break it down, because once you understand that and once you understand your goals, putting the numbers together are relatively easy. I mean, you got to do risk management. You got to make sure that we're projecting and we're staying on top of certain performances, but you really want confidence is the key with the client. And through confidence, the main tool we use to establish confidence in a client is knowledge and understanding. A lot of these clients,
Yes.
a lot of these new prospective clients specifically, they come in and, I ask for the statement. And that's another thing about, another stage of vulnerability is just, hey, here's my statement. It could be bad. It could be good. I don't know. My guy's telling me it's good, but who knows? Andrew might come back to me and say this is the worst thing in the world. And,
Yeah.
there's a lot of dread and fear. So, um, yeah, it's just understanding, analyzing and making sure that it's tailored to that specific client's needs and wants.
And we know that one specific financial plan for retirement is not the cookie cutter template for every single person. So you've got to craft it for their unique situation.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the high level differences for working with someone in their 30s or 40s versus someone's even in 50s to 60s? Because there could be some nuanced differences that you're looking for to make recommendations in those two age demographics.
That's a great question. So I get the opportunity to work with, 30 and 40-year-olds like my age. And then I get the opportunity to individuals who have achieved that goal. Pretty much they're at the top of the mountain. So their goals and their needs and wants are going to be it's night and day. But specifically, I want to get back to kind of like our age group, or my age group is 30 and 40. Um, it's usually they just established a family. Like they have young kids, they're married, they just got a brand new house, and they really haven't had the opportunity um to sort of build a financial plan when it comes to the
Mhm.
budgeting. How are we going to establish retirements, and what funds do we need to put away? How are the kids going to be situated? So I think it's important to, and it took me a while to do this too, because it's the first kind of like big step. I had a client, younger client, come in to me or give me a call the other day, and she goes, "Yeah, I need you to teach us how to be adults. I don't know how to budget this thing or anything like that." And so,
Yeah,
there's
makes
always
sense.
there's certain goals, but the main thing is it's their first step, and it's the first step's always going to be the hardest. And so
Yeah.
once you get past that first step and you look at your expenses, I know that's the toughest thing in the world. I'm looking at my expenses and I'm going, where are all these trips going to? What are we doing? Why are we spending this much on this? So it does get, it's a little overwhelming sometimes. So, but it's,
Versus someone in their 60s, you're not
yes.
necessarily working with them on budget, maybe sometimes, but it kind of shifts, and then their needs shift. And so makes me think about this when we're talking about, finding that right investment vehicle. What are some of those key factors once you get to that next step of explaining what they need to be doing? What are some of those key factors that they need to be considering when looking at the best investment vehicles to get them where they want to go?
Yeah. And I think the main difference between, the younger generation versus an older generation is time. So when
Yes.
you're younger, you've got plenty of time. You always want to be just on top of your investments and your strategy. You always want to make sure you're following it, but you have time in case you were to experience volatility. But if you look at somebody who's getting closer to retirement or even at the top of the mountain in retirement, time is your enemy. It used to be
Mhm.
your best friend. You used to, be young, free, put your money away. You hardly ever looked at your accounts. But when you get closer to the finish line, you don't have that time to make up for, let's just say any sort of loss that you experience in the market. So, um, and again, it's not a cookie cutter answer, but depending on the individual, the situation is always going to be different. There's so many different more concerns as opposed to in later in life and earlier. And earlier, there's not a whole lot. It's just about building those assets. You're at the end. Okay, I have the assets. Now my fear is, long-term care, losing all this money that I've worked in the market. So one of the main tools that we really see a lot is fixed indexed annuities. And I think, and again, not one size fits all. For most individuals, it's a great vehicle. For others, it wouldn't suit them, and that's fine. But we find a lot of fixed indexed annuities are the best for achieving a lot of goals. Fixed indexed annuities, there's so many different. I mean, I could spend another 3 hours on the different benefits and how they're structured. There's so many different, I guess Teslas, you could say, like vehicles in that sense. They all have their own different components, and this one's got, an extra battery that makes it last longer. This one's got, a bigger screen in the middle. So, but based on, you can tailor a fixed index annuity based on the client's concerns. So if they have a concern with long-term care, we have a fixed index annuity that can help address that specific long-term care need should that arise. They have a concern with losing, having their Social Security, whether it disappear or get lowered. There's a fixed index annuity for that. Is there a concern for leaving enough for my kids? I want to make sure that my kids have enough for when I pass. There's a fixed index annuity for that. If they want guaranteed income for the rest of their life, there's a fixed index annuity for that. So it kind of ties back to that first original meeting is we want to figure out what is it that scares you? Is it long-term care? Is it leaving enough for the kids? Are you fine with what you have? And your main concern is principal protection. You don't want it. You don't necessarily need it to grow because you don't want to expose yourself. So it all ties back to that first one because fixed index annuities we've seen are the greatest thing in the world for a lot of clients if it's the perfect match. I've had clients come in and it's the worst thing in the world because it has nothing to do with what they wanted or what they're, it doesn't suit their.
It doesn't make the fixed indexed annuity a bad product. It just means that it doesn't fit what they need.
I mean, there are some fixed index annuities that are bad products, but the overall concept of it generally is not a bad concept. It's just you have to make sure you're finding the right company, the right specific product and policy. And, like I said, I could spend 3 hours on the multiple different annuities and what they do, but you have to find a relationship and somebody that you're comfortable with, an advisor that can show you and be transparent and show you how this specifically addresses your needs. This might be from a company named Allianz North American Athene, but this is yours. This isn't North American's policy. This is, let's just say Team Mike. Mike, this is Mike's annuity. This isn't North American. That's a relationship you have with that company, but this is specifically Mike's annuity.
So let's customize it for what is needed. Yeah.
Exactly.
You mentioned long-term care and we don't need to get into the weeds of all of the intricacies there, but aren't I correct in thinking that if someone sets up a standalone long-term care policy, it's similar to your homeowners or car insurance where you pay it. And if you need to make a claim, you make a claim. But if you don't get your money back versus what you just described with certain types of how annuities are structured. If there's a long-term care provision there, if you need the long-term care, it's there for you. But if you don't, then your money is still sitting there earning. So it kind of gives you the best of both worlds.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, it's just like either term or home or car. If you don't use it, you're going to lose it. So and especially if you're talking about an individual that's, let's just say towards the end, not towards the end. They're at the finish line of retirement. So their concern for long-term care is already at age 30. And so if your options at that age are very limited, and if you even glance at a long-term care strict policy where it's just long higher.
Yep.
You're not only have a fixed index annuity that can also provide you, growth as well. So and you come to that crossroads. So let's just say we do have an issue with long-term care. We can either let this account keep growing, or if we need to access it, we're going to access it.
Yep. It's just nice just to know that it's there. I think a lot of times people, when we're talking about investment vehicles and to perform in the future for retirement, we think of risk and security. So comment a little bit on balancing the risk and security, because a couple of the points you just made about this option of annuities is it gives you guarantees. And so how does that risk and security get balanced out when making some of these decisions?
Yeah, it's a great question. We do seminars specific, we do a bunch of different seminars on certain topics, but annuities have been the top of the list for a lot of people. And yeah, like you said, annuities have that principal protection, but so yes, it's great that we don't lose any money, but we want to be in a position to where if the market does go up, we want to be able to participate in that growth.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you want to make sure that you have participation rates. You want to make sure that your participation rate within your annuity is higher than 100%. Because, I've seen if a participation rate has 50% and that specific index goes up 10%, you don't get 10%. You only get 5%.
Ooh.
And so that's one of the things that we achieve with knowledge and providing confidence with our clients is we teach them and help them understand what the difference between these mechanisms within annuities is: participation rates and caps. So caps are pretty standard. If I have a cap of 10 and I jump up 11 feet, only same thing with the market. If the market goes up 20 and you're capped at 7.5, you're only getting 7.5 regardless of what the
Yeah.
market does. So yeah, that's kind of the things
And
that
that gets back to your point about knowing the trust level with your advisor to realize that, okay, it's wonderful that I am not going to lose money. That's great. It's wonderful that I see this fixed rate of return. But if you're capped out and that index goes up, more than you initially thought, you want to participate in that and not get capped out of that ceiling. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, and you want to make sure that you're in, the company or the annuity has the ability, to diverse themselves with multiple indexes, and they all have their different goals. But you talk about risk and reward. I mean, with the fixed index annuities, there's little to no risk. I mean, you're going to get 0% if the market goes down, but that reward is important because I mentioned it earlier. You don't want to go broke safely. Because if you have a
Yep.
fixed index annuity, great. I'm not losing anything, but my index are performing so terribly. I can't even talk about inflation the last 2 years. I would have loved to have gotten, those numbers on inflation with a couple of accounts that we had coming across my desk. So again, that's just another thing that a lot of people have concerns with is inflation. You want to make sure you address those specific needs.
Yep. Exactly. Well, can you think of an example where you've worked with the client that needed that correct guidance for the best investment vehicle, and you sat down with them and laid something out that really impacted their financial trajectory in a positive way?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love bringing this one up. We had it was in 2019, so it was kind of right before the big 2020. And we had a client or a referral come into our office down in San Clemente. He used to work on the what do you call those? The loading docks down in Long Beach. So, where they bring the ships in and the harbors, and I think he was longshoreman. That was it. And he'd been working there for forever, 30 plus years. And finally he just retired, and they basically just said, okay, here's your 401k, you figure it out. And, not so blunt, but, that's kind of what it feels like. You're working there for 30 plus years. You're putting your money away. You're basically building this up. This is what's going to carry you on to the golden years. And it's precious because, again, you're just handed this amount of money in this asset, and it says, okay, you make it last, bud. And so him coming into our office was eye-opening and kind of understanding that, this is very, very important to us. And we understand how important that is. And it's overwhelming. Is key is overwhelming. You get all this. You do not want to screw this up. You've worked the last 30 years. You hear horror stories like it could be gone in 5 years. So his main concern was about working on this nest egg. He didn't want to see it even spike down a little bit. So it was in 2019 we were able to reposition it into a fixed index annuity. that had a couple of benefits that we were able to include in there just to address his specific needs. But thank God we did that, because in 2019 we had, or in early 2020, we had the market drop down the way it did. So, I'm not going to say I'm a genius.
But taking that that conservative approach sure paid off. That's a great point.
Yeah, and I've seen clients come into my office where they have an annuity, but it's a variable annuity, and they didn't need to be exposed to the market. They have all the assets. They don't need to be exposed. They don't need to be chasing those gains. Out here in Vegas, you have all the slot machines, and it's like, life is kind of like that. You've been playing the game. You're at retirement. Why keep playing? Just take your money, walk out of the casino. Just save that and just, keep, because that's your baby. That's the nest egg that's going to continue on for the best years of your life.
Perfect. Well, Andrew, it's been a real pleasure chatting with you about this. If someone is interested in reaching out and learning more and connecting with you, what's the best way they can do that?
They can visit us at www.generationswealthmgt.com. There we have a link to our podcast, a YouTube, all the cool stuff that the kids are into today. So,
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I really appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to further conversations.
Excellent. Thank you.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.